I want to talk about today about one of the greatest balancing acts needed as people of faith trying to make a difference in the world. You see, some of the early Zionists, the beginning of the Zionist endeavor, believed that you have to create the Israeli at the expense of the old Jew, the new Israeli. Absolute self-reliance to build a country on our own, totally oblivious to the fact that God and Jewish history had anything to do with it. Total self-reliance. That was one extreme. But then there was also an extreme reaction the other way of people who said, no, total reliance on God. The future redemption will be absolutely miraculous in every possible way. Full reliance on God. The other extreme. Total reliance on ourselves to the exclusion of God. Total reliance of God to the exclusion of our action. I believe that there is a way in the middle, and it is expressed in a brilliant commentary of the Ran, Rabbeinu Nissim, one of the great medieval commentators, on a verse in this week's Parasha. You see, most of us know the verse of Kochi v'otzim yadi asai l'techa elazeh, that people will say when we come to the land and build up the land, that our own strength and our own actions have brought us to do this at the expense of God. Says the Rabbeinu Nissim, this is not the case. He says a person should be saying that. Indeed, it does say that we have to be careful when we come to the land and that we might be haughty and attribute everything to ourselves. But he says a person has to be self-reliant. Otherwise, belief in God and faith often brings one to be so reliant on God that it excuses one to have any human interaction. And it's true the other extreme as well. If we're so reliant on ourselves, we forget about God. And therefore he says, if you read the verse carefully, he says, Rabbeinu Nissim in Drashot Haran, he says, we say, Kochi v'otzim yadi, he said, you should say, I have achieved this through the power of my own hand, my own actions. And then immediately the verse says, V'zacharta, you must remember, he says, Et Hashem Elokecha ki hu anoten lecha lasot chaya. You must remember that all of your success is only because it is God who gives you the strength. And here we have an unbelievable equation, which I think brings us to a middle road of a tremendously important balancing act. We have to sometimes be so self-reliant, as if things are fully dependent on ourselves, taking full responsibility for the course of our lives. But at the very same time, to be fully dependent on God, knowing that we could not even lift our finger or do anything if God does not will it. Full reliance on God. How is it that you can be totally reliant on God and totally reliant on yourselves, on ourselves? The answer is we simply have to have it both ways. That is the balancing act. Because if we don't, if we're fully reliant on ourselves and forget about God, we become haughty and proud and think it's all about us and God could change everything in a minute. But if we become so reliant on God, we often bring ourselves to the understanding that we are exempt to do anything. And may we, Bezrat Hashem, in our lives, in building an incredible country together in Israel and in everything we do in life, know that we have to have it both ways. Full reliance on God, that nothing would happen without God, remembering God, but understanding that God helps him or her who helps them help themselves. Absolute commitment to self-reliance and absolute commitment to remembering that our self-reliance is only successful as our reliance on Hashem. Shabbat Shalom.